Hello, everybody, and welcome. I am Dr. Dan Kalish, and this is our spring mentorship mini-series. As it implies, there's two of these. There's one today and there's one later this week to complete the series. And today we're going to talk about the gut-estrogen connection and all that that implies. So we're going to look at some slides, but I'll keep it as short as I can. Then we're going to look at some labs and cases and then design protocols. And this is a direct copy of what we do in my mentorship class, which is coming up in April. So those of you that are interested in escalating from this mini series up to like the real class, you can come look at our information on the mentorship that's starting later this month. And the mentorship class itself is basically a year of this, but it's like hours and hours a week of lab interpretation skills development, case review. You review your cases in class with the group, with the teachers. We design protocols together. We have other students that are chiming in. It's not like madness, but it's like very organized chaos so that you're learning, case, learning, case. At the end of the year, you've reviewed 400 or 500 cases live in the calls that you're in. There's another 5, 6, 800, 1,000 cases that are available to you if you want to participate in them, and you learn the pathways, you learn the patient management part, and by the end of the year, you're going to be a respectable functional medicine practitioner in terms of lab interpretation skills. So we've done a good job over these last 15, 20 years of learning how to train people quickly in lab interpretation. So for those of you that are brand new, I am Dan Kalish. I am the founder of the Kalish Institute. We've trained thousands of doctors now. We've worked with all kinds of people from all over the spectrum, from Cleveland Clinic. We've had my graduates work at the Cleveland Clinic. We've worked with Mayo Clinic. We've done some work with just about every major clinic you can imagine in the integrative health space. And I've had some of the best teachers in the industry too, which is really one of the great gifts that I've received in my life. So that ability to have my own mentors really inspired me back in 2006 to develop the mentorship training. And it's working. It's been working for a long time. We've got a little over 1,000 graduates of this more advanced course. It's a year long. It's a pretty big commitment in terms of your wanting to build a practice. Like, this is not for people who are just thinking about doing functional medicine. These are people that they're ready to go. They may have done IFM, they graduated, now they're ready to open a clinic and they want to get all the protocols down. Or they've been dabbling in functional medicine for a while, but now they're ready to leave their acupuncture clinic or leave their chiropractic clinic or leave their primary care clinic and really do functional medicine first time. So we get a really super motivated group of people, and everyone's learning in real time, interpreting labs, building their clinic. There's not a lot of people just sitting around twiddling their thumbs in this class. And we get a lot done. It's very exciting. So anyways, it's coming up. Uh, you get a discount of $1,000 off, basically, if you sign up in the next week or two. And it's starting April 14th. So those of you that have been interested and sitting on the fence, just jump in and do it. It's very impactful, life-changing program. So today we're going to talk about one subject that's one tiny part of one section of the mentorship, but it's an important part, and it's about the microbiome and how that connects to estrogen and estrogen metabolism. And this is one of these sort of dual lab things where you're going to see lab markers on a GI test, and then you're going to see lab markers on a hormone metabolite profile, and then you put 2 and 2 together, and bingo, you get a protocol. And this is a test that this is a series of tests that should be run on every female. I guess how old? I guess from the time she starts menstruating, so let's say 14, 15-year-old girls all the way up to women in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, because you want to know what your estrogen metabolism is like. And if you're making the dangerous metabolites, you should know that because it increases your risk of breast cancer. And if you have a high beta-glucuronidase on your stool test, you kind of need to know that because that increases your risk of breast cancer. And both of those things can be corrected in a very straightforward way. You can correct them, you can retest, and make sure that that marker is gone from the GI test, That marker is beta-glucuronidase. If it's elevated, it means that there's a problem with the microbiome, with the gut bacteria, that's leading to a recycling or reabsorption of estrogen, which you don't want to have happen. When the estrogen is packaged in your gut, ready for exit to be dumped out through the stool, you want it to leave. You don't want it to come back in because that throws off your estrogen status, let's say. And it's a gut microbiome imbalance that leads to estrogen recycling back into the system. And so you can see it on both sides of the test. You can see the beta-glucuronidase is high, and then you can see the estrogen metabolites on the different kinds of metabolic testing you can do for estrogen. And this is from Johns Hopkins. I show this research study because that's where we got these slides from, and these are a nice summary of what we're talking about. And also to let you know that this is not like some fly-by-night thing. You know, this is pretty serious science. People are investigating this. It's pretty amazing. So what's the connection between the microbiome and estrogen? In general, you have the estrogens over here, all right? They're being produced. You've got the estrogens. Okay, now they're in your liver because your body's getting ready to break them down. So it breaks them down into these metabolites, and the metabolites have complicated names. There's the 2-hydroxyestrone, 2-methoxyestrone, there's a 4, there's a 6, there's a ton of different names, and we'll go through this. But the only ones that really matter in the short term are the 2 and the 4. In general, the 2 is good and the 4 is bad, if you want to make it overly simple. That is then pushed into the bile and it goes into your gut. But what happens if your beta-glucuronidase is high is that gut estrogen metabolite stuff that your body's trying to get broken down and out of your body gets reabsorbed back into your circulation. You wouldn't think that's even possible, but apparently it is. You can measure for it. And here's another diagram from that study that shows this nicely. Here's your estrogen. Okay, that's estrone or E1, and there's your E2. They're being broken down. That's your liver right here. Okay, so your liver's like, okay, we don't need you anymore. Let's get rid of you. Where are we going to dump you? I don't know. Let's put you in the stool because that means that you're going to exit the body. So now you've dumped that metabolite out in the stool. But along comes your beta-glucuronidase. And because your gut microbiome is kind of messed up, that beta-glucuronidase is way higher than it should be. And then what happens? You reabsorb those estrogen metabolites back into your bloodstream. And that's what puts you at risk for breast cancer, endometrial cancer, endometrial hyperplasia, endometriosis, ovarian cancer, PCOS. Here it says right here, and this is again right out of that study, beta-glucuronidase enzymes reactivate estrogens. They reactivate estrogens. The estrogen that's supposed to be getting out of your body pulls back in. Gut microbial beta-glucuronidase enzymes within the GI deconjugate. They deconjugate this stuff and it reactivates it. It brings it back into the bloodstream. So your gut makes a big difference in terms of what's happening with your estrogen. And this is not like, we're not wondering about this. We're testing for this. So then there's kind of another implication that you want your liver to be getting rid of these things effectively, and you want your gut microbiome to be balanced so they don't get reabsorbed. So it's a gut-liver hormone situation. You fix the gut, you fix the liver, you fix the hormone pathway problem, and then you get a complete solution. So it's one of these integrated problems where if you just do a stool test and see high beta-glucuronidase, you really don't know what the status of the estrogen metabolites is like, the good ones or the bad ones. If you just do a Dutch test, or you just do a HUMAP, or you just do a urinary metabolites from Genova, then you see where the metabolites are, but you don't know what's happening with the stool on beta-glucuronidase, so you don't know if they're being reabsorbed or not. And if you just do the stool test and the HUMAP or Dutch test, and you don't do a liver detox profile, then you don't know how well the liver is doing. So you're kind of forced to deal with all three of these. So in other words, in order to get a complete solution, you need to know that your liver can break down and remove hormones effectively. You need to know that your gut is not going to force your body to reabsorb them back into the bloodstream, recycle them, reactivate them, like the Hopkins people described it, reactivating your estrogen. Now, you don't want that. You don't want it reactivated. You want it gone. Okay, and then you need to know the status of the metabolites, because if you have a high level of the bad metabolites, this is actually dangerous. This is not just like a frou-frou kind of problem. This is like, increases your risk of breast cancer. And that's a really leading type of cancer that women get. And that's, not everybody dies from it, but nobody wants to have breast cancer. And you can screen for all this before she gets sick. You could do this for every 25-year-old female in your practice, long before they would develop any signs of breast cancer. I mean, they should know their status of their estrogen metabolites. Every female should know that. It should just be common knowledge. It should be done on everybody. And if you have a female and you're not doing that, it's kind of almost negligence, really, because it's an easy test. It's couple $100, and it's not like it's gonna have been done before, right? It should be just a basic screening that gets done all the time, but it's just not. So it's sort of fallen on the functional medicine people to pick up the banner and deal with this. But when you get a case, and we had a case like this in the mentorship a couple of weeks ago, she had high 4-hydroxy. That's the one we're going to look at in a minute. That's the bad metabolite. That was high. Her 2s were low. That's the good one. She had a ton of oxidative stress. Her liver wasn't working very well, and she had high beta-glucuronidase. She had every single variable that you could have that would make this a serious problem all at the same time, okay? And that's just not acceptable. That's something that you need to correct. You just need to correct it as soon as you possibly can. Okay, so we're going to get through the details of this now. Liver detox pathways, you guys probably already know this, is phase 1 and phase 2. And there's basic antioxidants that run these. There's glutathione, there's B vitamins, and it's pretty straightforward how to fix the liver. There's just a couple of products that you need for these kinds of cases to get things moving along. And here's a nice schematic sort of drawing of what that all is. So you have phase 1, cytochrome P450 enzymes, phase 2, conjugation pathways, and the key nutrients that we use in these cases are generally going to be phase 2. So that's going to be glycine, taurine, glutamine, N-acetylcysteine, cysteine, methionine. And what's not on here is calcium D-glucarate. So we want to pencil that in. And this is a special instance for this particular situation for liver, calcium D-glucarate. You can use that as a separate supplement, or there's some combination products that have all the phase 2 nutrients plus the calcium D-glucarate together. Okay. And we're going to go through protocols in a minute, so I'll show you actual products that you can use. So there's a general emphasis on phase 2. You can do support for phase 1, but that's usually not the bigger part of the problem. So high beta-glucuronidase. It's exactly what we're talking about, okay? So this mechanism involves toxins being reabsorbed back into the bloodstream. This is an estrogen that you've broken down that you want to get rid of rather than eliminating it from the body. And there's some complicated science behind that. It doesn't really matter too much. So lifestyle treatments, you want to do a bunch of things for the gut because it's a gut problem that's generating a hormone imbalance that puts you at more or less risk depending on your estrogen metabolites, right? So your estrogen metabolites can be the 2 or the 4, the good or the bad kind. You can have a gut problem that's triggering the reabsorption of estrogen. If you're reabsorbing the bad kind a lot, that's extra bad, right? And then you want to make sure your liver is clearing everything. So on the gut treatment side, you want to do the basic things like improve short chain fatty acid producing bacteria. That's your prebiotics. And there's 2 aspects to that, polyphenols and fiber. And every supplement company has polyphenols and fiber, okay? And so right off the bat, that's improving the good gut bacteria. You want to treat dysbiosis if it's present. You see the stool test, you treat the dysbiosis. That's going to lower the beta-glucuronidase problem. And now you've got the gut side of it solved. I mean, it takes 2 months, 6 months, something like that to do that, but it's doable, okay? And then for beta-glucuronidase specifically, if you don't want to wait around for the gut to correct, you just want to address it like today, you can use calcium D-glucarate, and that prevents the reabsorption of these estrogens and allows them to get flushed out of your body. Why? Because it's promoting phase 2 glucuronidation. Phase 2 glucuronidation. Let's go back a few slides. That's phase 2 right here. These conjugation pathways on the liver, okay? So there's that. And then you want to address the whole body, you know, so you want to deal with the stress hormones and other aspects of the female hormones too. Most of the time, these women are going to also usually have some other hormone imbalance and cortisol or DHEA or progesterone imbalance. It's rare that estrogen would get kafui by itself. Usually there's going to be other hormones to correct. So you want to test and correct the other hormones as well, you know? And then we're going to look at a little more in depth at the actual pathways because you're kind of supposed to know this. And I found it really confusing when I was first learning this. I think because there's so many different terms and you just kind of have to learn them all and then you kind of get it. So there's a couple of nice diagrams here so you can start to get familiar with the terms. And you don't have to be like, you know, an endocrinologist. You just need to be able to speak intelligently when you have a patient in front of you and you're looking at the labs. So here we have estrogen exposure throughout the lifetime. Do you have a genetic issue that's throwing this off? Because this is all centering around methylation, and I'll show you some pathways on that for in a second. If you do, then you're going to have a compromised detox clearance of estrogen, and that's going to put you at another level of risk. So now we're kind of stacking these risk factors one on top of the other. And you might as well have all of the potential risk factors that could lead to breast cancer eliminated completely. I mean, life is hard enough. You know, if there's things that you can correct with a couple $100 worth of labs and a couple $100 worth of supplements, then just get that stuff done. And then, you know, people have plenty of other problems, I'm sure, as life tears at them. Okay, estrogen metabolism of breast cancer. These are some other studies. And here I got this diagram off that last study there, just so you can see where all this stuff comes from. So here we have these two different pathways. There's one CYP1A1 pathway and the CYP1B1 pathway. The thing you got to remember is that the 2-hydroxy is the good one and the 4-hydroxy is a potentially dangerous one. What happens is your body converts the 2-hydroxy into the 2-methoxy form. And then that means it's harmless and it's going away and it's not a problem. You can also convert the dangerous metabolite, the 4-hydroxy, into 4-methoxy, and then it goes away and it's not dangerous. So those are the good scenarios. The metabolites are just neutralized. However, if the 4 doesn't get neutralized, it doesn't go over this way, and instead it goes down that way, then it can form something called quinones, which leads to something called DNA adducts, which basically means that if you think of your DNA as like a staircase, like a spiral staircase with those little nucleotide, you know, things that are kind of connecting in there, they're like steps. The DNA adduct process means that the DNA is being structurally damaged. When it goes to replicate, we have abnormal cell replication, which is basically what we call cancer. And so what you don't want is for oxidative stress or DNA adducts to be damaging the replication capacity of the DNA. That's the danger here. And when we look carefully, you can see what neutralizes the 2-hydroxy and 4-hydroxy is this enzyme called COMT, catechol O methyltransferase, catechol O methyltransferase. It's the same enzyme. And the M, methylation, right? This is a methylation process. So this is why you can have a genetic component. If you're not good at methylating, you kind of have a higher risk of this problem. So again, the metabolite's broken down through this process of methylation. That's how you get rid of the dangerous one. And if you don't, then you're going to have higher than optimum levels of estrogen, or we call estrogen dominance. And that causes an inflammatory response, causes immune responses, causes thyroid problems, causes all kinds of bad things, as well as excessive risk of breast cancer and ovarian cancer and those kinds of things. Okay, if you joined us late, we're starting a new mentorship group next week. And if you want to do this kind of lab review and protocol design on your own patients on a daily basis, then sign up for the class. We're starting in a week. We don't do these that often. There's usually one every 3-4 months. And if you've been thinking about this, jump in, contact my team, and we'll get you signed up. All right, let's see here. It's not like this stuff is fun. It is kind of fun, but you can really help people if you get good at it. Treatments for estrogen dominance. Liver detox pathways. We already said you want to support glucuronidase. with calcium D-glucarate. Makes sense, right? Glucarate helps with glucuronidation, and that promotes phase 2 breakdown, so you don't have this reabsorption of these estrogens that you're trying to get rid of. Typically, you want to balance progesterone and adrenals and the thyroid, because estrogen dominance is usually a package that's involving other hormones. And it's most common that estrogen dominance is accompanied by some kind of problem with progesterone. So bringing up the progesterone helps balance out the problem with estrogen. And then you have to think about genetic issues, because we just saw that enzyme COMT and MTHFR, all the methylation related things that can go wrong, that can be genetically based, are going to cause this to happen at an accelerated rate, this whole problem that we're talking about. And then you can have, you also want to make sure you have plenty of glutathione to protect the DNA. You can use things like NAC and resveratrol to reduce the estrogen / DNA adduct formation, right? To address that whole abnormal or damage to the DNA that's happening. So calcium D-glucarate, people also often use DIM, depending on what the lab work shows, because that's going to also help metabolize estrogen into these more beneficial metabolites rather than the harmful ones. It pushes it towards the 2 pathway, DIM does. And let me show you the pathways for a second. You also can use, you can also cruciferous vegetables, but you're not going to eat enough broccoli and Brussels sprouts to make this happen, I don't think. But anyways, you want people eating healthy food. I mean, that seems to go without saying. And broccoli is like super important. I don't eat broccoli every day, but I eat a lot of broccoli. Everybody should eat a lot of broccoli. That seems pretty basic. You can have also factors that impact estrogen metabolism, like xenoestrogens. Those are chemical compounds that mimic estrogen. That makes everything that we're talking about worse. Excessive fat is going to make a production site for estrogen. So if you have too much body fat, that's going to potentially raise up estrogen levels also. Alcohol screws up everything. So, just everybody should just stop drinking alcohol, please. And then we want to support these COMT pathways. And where'd my diagram go? Let me pull up another diagram here. I'm missing one. But the basic here, the COMT pathways treatment, this is the gist of what we're talking about here, okay? Which is that you want to make sure, and you can test for each of these nutrients in different ways. So there's organic acids testing that you can look at B6, B12, and folate levels. You can assess magnesium in a million different ways. And if you see problems with methylation, or you see problems in their genetic testing, or you see problems with methylation markers themselves in the various labs, then this would be a standard protocol that you would use to start to correct things. And it's pretty straightforward. I just am missing one of my charts, so I just want to show you, because I like to show a couple of different versions of the same chart, just so you can get a better sense of what we're talking about. Let me pull up another one here. Oh, I know where the charts are. Duh, they're on the labs. What am I thinking? Sorry, I'm supposed to pull up the labs. That was my plan. Hang on a second, let me go back. We'll come back to these slides in a second, but let's just look at a couple of labs. So there's a test called the HUMAP that is from doctor's data, and that has the metabolites. These are done from urine, and this is a HUMAP from doctor's data. I'm just gonna skip to the portion of the test that we're talking about today. There's obviously a lot of other information on here, but the part that's important for today is way down here, this way. Not that, not that. There's so much data on these labs. Here we go. So here are the different estrogens. And there's another diagram. It's exactly what we just looked at, but I'll circle the relevant parts. So here we have E1, estrone, E2, estradiol. Remember we had that CYP1A1 and CYP1B1. So this is the pathway to the 2-hydroxy. Okay, you see 2-OH, that's the 2-hydroxy. And if things are going well, it breaks down into the 2-methoxy. And there's our COMT again, you see there? That's the methylation process that's doing that. If you're not methylating well, that's not going to happen. Here's the bad one, the 4-hydroxy. That's the CYP1B1 pathway. Also COMT, same enzyme, breaks it down into the 4-methoxy. And if that's going well, then things are good. You don't have to worry about it. But where we're worried is if this isn't working well, And then what happens? The 4-hydroxy goes high, and that's the one that causes the DNA damage. Just chews up your DNA. So now we go down and we look at the test, and they're measuring each one of these. So hopefully this will make sense. And we're ignoring the 16 on purpose. We're ignoring the 16 on purpose because that's not as important as the other ones. So this is a HUMAP from doctor's data. HUMAP, urinary hormone panel, called the HUMAP. It's relatively new. It came out like a year or two ago. And here's our 2-hydroxy, okay, and our 4-hydroxy. The 4-hydroxy is in the red zone. It's too high. That's a really big problem. You got to fix that. You got to knock the 4 down. Now we could pretend for a second that the 2 was low. If the 2 was low, we would want to also bring the 2 up. Okay, and these are the estrogen metabolites. Now, if the person has a problem with beta-glucuronidase, and that's on a stool test. So if you're doing a female hormone workup and you want to prevent breast cancer, you have to do a stool test or you're not really doing your job. So this is a doctor's data, GI 360. Every stool test in our industry has beta-glucuronidase. You got to hunt around for it a little bit though, so I just want to hunt around for it with you. You can do this as a group when we're hunting. We spend a lot of time in the mentorship just like flipping through labs trying to find things. I mean, it's half the job. If you don't know where it is, what you can do. Oh, we're getting close. I can sense it. There we go. We found it. All right. So it's this rather innocent little marker. You know, well, at least there's an asterisk by it. Beta-glucuronidase. So if that is high, then they're reabsorbing their estrogens and everything just got a whole lot worse. In this case, it's not high. So you take a deep breath and you can tell the patient, hey, your beta-glucuronidase is normal. That is great. We don't have to worry about the recycling of estrogen. But you cannot look at someone in the eye, no matter how smart you are, and just tell if their beta-glucuronidase is high or not. You just can't. You got to test for it. And you'd be shocked, you know, how often this shows up as a problem. So that's super important. The GI 360 has it. That's the doctor's data test. The GI Effects from Genova has beta-glucuronidase. I'm going to show you one more, the GI Map from Diagnostic Solutions. You scroll down the bottom of the test. Is it here? Yes, it is, beta-glucuronidase. Okay, so that is telling you if it's high, that estrogen metabolites are being recycled or reactivated back into the system. Okay, so I want to show you another one. Some of you are familiar with a Dutch test. It's the same exact thing as we just looked at, same pathways, just different graphics here. Let me go here. Yeah, you can see the whole thing here. And so now we've talked a lot about this already. It should start to make sense. Here's your 2-hydroxy. They depict that pathway in green. Green is good. Here's your 4-hydroxy. They depict that pathway in red. Red is bad. And here's the 16 that we're ignoring because it's not as important. And how many things can you really learn at one time? So if the 4-hydroxy is high, not good. If the 2 is low, that's also not good. And they also include methylation right here, methylation activity. Okay, if that's low, then you're not methylating very well. And that means what? That you're not, you're at risk for these metabolites not breaking down properly. So you can see all this information right here. And then the worst case scenario is the 4-hydroxy is high. That's the one that goes out and damages your DNA. The 2-hydroxy is low. That's the one that's protective. Metabolites, that's protective. Your methylation is poor. And your glutathione, you see glutathione detox right here? And your glutathione levels are low. That means that you've got a stream of this pathway here. The 4 is going down here. Here's our quinones, remember? And our DNA adducts. That means that they've got shoom straight on down here. There's nothing stopping the DNA adducts from forming, and that's when you get abnormal cell replication because the DNA has been damaged. They're trying to show that here. So I'm going to blow that up a little bigger so you can see it. So you can either do a HUMAP from doctor's data or a Dutch test to get the same basic information here. Let me make this big so you can't miss it. And then go ahead and type in questions. And we'll get to questions in a second once I design a protocol. All right, here we go. And we want you guys ringing off, we want our phones, we don't have phones, but you want our email ringing off the hook with you guys signing up for the mentorship class, because you're gonna wanna do this all day, every day for the next year, right? And get good at it. So if this is happening in a big way, and this marker is high, and you don't have the glutathione to block it, if you have enough glutathione, you just neutralize this whole thing right here. If you can go over to methylation and detox it this way, then it doesn't matter. It's gone, Zippo, gone. But if you can't, and it's going down this reactive pathway, then bam, it's like a sledgehammer hitting your DNA. It's like a flamethrower and a sledgehammer and a knife and a spear just hitting your DNA. So then what's going to happen? Your DNA is going to like, and then it's going to replicate and it's damaged. It's structurally damaged. So it replicates abnormally. So the way, how do you prevent that? You get the 2s higher. We just showed like DIM and calcium D-glucarate and all these other things. You get the 4s lower by what? Improving methylation. Showed you all the supplements for that too. And then you get a ton of antioxidants in their system, so they have plenty of protection. And then you can stop it here, you can stop it here, you can push everything over that way, you get the 2s up, the 4s down, and then you think you're done. But then you realize, oh, wait a minute, did I do a stool test on this patient that's seeing me for female hormone problems? And you're like, I don't know, maybe I should go check them for beta-glucuronidase. And what if their beta-glucuronidase is high and you missed that? Then all that other work you did is it's not a total waste of time, but kind of is, you know, because now you've got the recycling or reactivation of estrogen if this marker is high. And then separately from that, but we're not going to talk about it today because I'm going to stop with the lecture now, you want to run liver detox, you know, pathways too, and see what their glutathione status is like, and look at their antioxidant levels and all that kind of stuff, right? So, all right, so I'm gonna just do a protocol design. I'm gonna make up a case and then design a protocol so you can see how this might look. And then we'll go to questions. All right, let's see here. Let me just complete the slides too, so don't forget about that. Here. I think we already talked about methylation, but just to re-mention it, that's an important part of this whole process. And what are the methylation treatments? B6, B12, folate, magnesium, betaine, SAMe, methionine, and help reduce stress. Methylation treatments, that looks familiar. It looks kind of like the COMT pathways treatment because it's catechol O methyltransferase. That's the name of the enzyme. It's a methylation process. It's the same slide because it's the same thing. It's a methylation treatment. Oh, you know, this came up today in class. You don't want to improve methylation dramatically if their glutathione is really screwed up and their mitochondria are stuck in an inflammatory state. You can make people worse doing methylation treatments. You'll know right away because you'll give them B6, B12, and folate. They're going to come back in a week and say, I am like worse than I've ever been. Why are you giving me this poison? You'll be like, wait a minute, but I just did this webinar and the guy said that this was good for you. Well, if your mitochondria are stuck and damaged and you increase the methylation process, you can make people worse. So I just throwing it out there as a potential option, not to freak you out, but if you see people get worse with this protocol, it means there's probably some major mitochondrial glutathione problem. Okay, so again, here's a QR code for those you want to sign up for the mentorship next week that's starting. And in that class, then we review labs every week, the labs that you send in. We have like 3 or 4 hours of lab review sessions every week. But you join one and you submit your own tests to one, but you can listen to the other ones as well. We have this massive curriculum I've designed that goes through all the different steps of lab interpretation. And most importantly, like how you integrate across labs, like how you do a hormone, like we're trying to do today, to be honest, how you do a hormone test, let's say hormones themselves plus a metabolite test like HUMAP or Dutch, plus GI testing, plus organic acids. How do you incorporate all three of those? And as I'm trying to show this today, it's actually you kind of have to, because if you have a classic female hormone imbalance, you got to know the hormone levels, you got to know the metabolites, you got to fix the adrenals, you got to look at the gut, at least look at it and see if they have a direct estrogen related problem on their gut test. And they're almost always going to have some gut issue they have to fix anyways, right? And then look at organic acids because you need to see their oxidative stress levels and glutathione status, if only to fix their hormones safely. So all those things need to be done in an integrated way. And that's what we do in the mentorship is teach you the individual labs and then how to pull them together. So you get case after case each week where the practitioners are submitting all three labs, hormones, GI, and organic acids on a patient, and we're interpreting them together as a group so you can see how it works. And then the curriculum reinforces. You learn each lab, and then you learn how to put them together in the actual live calls. It's been very successful. I've gotten good at it. I've been doing it since '06. We have a really great faculty now, too. We've got a couple of really hotshot faculty people helping me teach. And we have like the world's preeminent interpreter of the Dutch test that joined our faculty recently, so that's pretty cool. All right, let me pull up a protocol. Yeah, she's amazing. I know a little bit about these tests, but she knows a lot. There we go. Okay, so here would be a typical program, but I'm going to make up the circumstances so you can see. So the patient has high beta-glucuronidase. They have high 4-hydroxy, that's the bad one, and they have low 2-hydroxy. And we, like I said, we had one just like this recently, and they have poor methylation. How do you know? Because their B6, B12, and folate markers were all off. That's on organic acids. And I'm not even having to make these things up. This is actually like real people, right? And then low glutathione. Oh my gosh. First of all, it's not going to feel very good if all this is going on, because what's happening? High beta-glucuronidase shows she's reactivating her estrogen. She's trying to get rid of it. It's coming right back. Estrogen dominance. I don't know if people can feel the high 4-OH, but probably a little bit. It doesn't feel very good either, I don't think. But not being able to methylate feels crappy because that's neurotransmitter problems, hormone problems. You need to be able to methylate just to run your DNA, right? So that's like a gene level of problem. Those people feel horrible. And then low glutathione means you're inflamed all the time. You know, you're hungry all the time. You're tired all the time. Just bad, bad, bad. These are the typical patients. And so we want to do like a 6-month program, and we're going to do calcium D-glucarate. And this stuff works. I mean, that's the other thing. Like when I was first learning this, Dr. Timmons would teach me, just like I'm trying to teach you guys today. And then I would go home and I would think, I don't know if this is going to work or not, you know, like, because I had never done it before. And then the only thing that kept me going was I thought, I don't know, he's old, he's got gray hair. I know everybody respects him. He knows this is going to, it works for him. And then I would think, was it going to work for me? I was always really worried about that. But then you do it like 100 times, you're like, wow, this stuff like really works. It's not a joke. Like you redo the testing and people are like dramatically better. So then you need to use a B6, B12, folate type product. There's a whole bunch of them. Usually they're titled homocysteine something, you know, so I use homocysteine supreme from Designs, but there's a ton of other products you could use. Calcium D-glucarate, maybe do 2 of those in the morning, 2 at night. And then you want to do some NAC because their glutathione was low. I like the 900 milligram versions of that. So you kind of load them up on some glutathione support. And then we got methylation covered with the homocysteine supreme. You also need a B complex, general B vitamins. And then DIM. I use DIM Detox a lot. That's from Pure Encapsulations. Most companies will have something similar to that. And the DIM detox has got all the phase 2 detox support in it, plus the DIM, which is kind of convenient. And then for sure, always use a multi-pack of some kind. That'll have all the minerals and magnesium and calcium and all that stuff. Fatty acids usually too. So that would be a typical program. Calcium D-glucarate, some of the methylation support. Now you could add to the methylation support, but you're going to get into this situation where you have so many products. You could add in everything that was on that slide. Honestly, usually that's a little too many products and it's a little too much for people to handle. So I would probably try something like this first, and if it's not working, start to add to it. You got your glutathione support, some extra Bs, the DIM, and the multi-pack. And then what's going to happen is the 2s are going to come up, the 4s are going to drop. They're going to eat broccoli all the time, right? They're doing the lifestyle stuff. Beta-glucuronidase is going to drop because you're going to test and correct your gut. We're not doing that program here, but you would test and correct their gut because they're going to have dysbiosis if they have high beta-glucuronidase. So you're fixing their dysbiosis separately. And then they're methylating properly, their glutathione's coming up, and these metabolites are starting to even out. And if you get the gut sorted out, then this would be a, like a long-term solution that should last for quite some time. Okay, so let's go back to questions. See, we have time. Yeah, we have tons of time. Look at that. I'm doing really well here. Okay, so type in your questions. I'll get to as many as I can. And let's see what people are thinking. Again, this should be a screening that you do on every female patient. Why not? It's inexpensive and it's super important. If it's elevated in men, I think you mean the beta-glucuronidase. Yeah, it's still a bad thing. We're not worried about breast cancer, obviously, because they don't have breasts, but worried about prostate cancer and other kinds of problems like that. But you don't use, the protocols are completely different for men. So don't use DIM and stuff like that for males, but you end up with similar kinds of problems. Let's see, Mary's asking if estradiol is elevated, but beta-glucuronidase is normal, can you assume it's more of a liver problem than a gut problem? Yeah, so lots of things can cause estrogen dominance. You can have xenoestrogens, so chemical compounds can cause it. You could have excess body fat that could cause it. You could have tons of inflammation in the body that can cause it. You could have hormone pathway problems, liver clearance problems. So beta-glucuronidase is only one potential reason for estrogen dominance, but definitely you could have others. And you would assume, I guess, it's more of a liver issue if you see the gut's not the problem. What are the names of the 3 tests to request? So the test would be some kind of an adrenal hormone profile. So I showed a Dutch test here, a HUMAP. Let me show those again for those that don't know all this stuff. The HUMAP from Doctor's Data is less expensive. Here's what that one looks like. HUMAP from Doctor's Data. Hormonal hormone and urinary metabolites assessment profile. That's what HUMAP stands for. Try to say that. I can't barely say it. Okay, so HUMAP or a Dutch test. That's also going to capture all these. If you're a Genova fan, Genova has urinary hormone metabolites as a separate test. So that's the one for hormone assessment. And then the second one would be GI testing. The most popular nowadays, I think, is the GI map. This one's super popular. It's a great test. This is a great company too, Doctor's Data. They have a GI 360. And then the third and final test would be organic acids. And the labs that have that, Genova has really great organic acids testing, and Diagnostic Solutions has great organic acids testing. So those are the 3 basic workups that we do on every patient. Adrenal hormones, maybe with the metabolites like we're showing tonight, GI testing, and then organic acids. I think I covered off in the test. Vibrant is a wonderful lab company too. They have a ton of labs. And I don't think there's a best company. You know, I've know all these labs. I visited all of them in person. I know all the lab directors. So It comes down to personal preference, to what you like, what reporting structure you like, maybe what sales rep you like, honestly, the most is giving you the best sales support, formatting of the lab, turnaround time. But in terms of accuracy, all these lab companies are right in the same spot. So if you think about it in terms of other purchases we make, I don't know, if you want to buy a luxury car, you're going to buy a BMW or a Mercedes or a Lexus. I mean, people have strong personal preferences about that, but when you get down to the quality of each one of them, they're not that different. And I think it's the same with these lab companies. And most practitioners end up having their favorite over time, but it's all based on personal opinions. And Vibrant is right up there in the top. So if you're asking me for the top labs, Genova, Vibrant, Diagnostic Solutions, and Doctor's Data. And then for the hormone testing metabolites, for sure the Dutch test from Precision Analytical is the most popular. Okay. They don't do much else there, but they do the Dutch, and that one is the most popular for sure. You can do blood work. We're just not talking about it now, but yeah, you can absolutely do blood work for FSH and LH and all these other things. Yeah, the Dutch test is exactly the same as the HUMAP and the Dutch. I mean, the Genova test. The Genova, it's a urinary metabolites from Genova. If you like Genova, you can use them. Let me show you. I'm telling you, we spend like the first few weeks in the mentorship just figuring out what test to order. It's not easy. And like, how do you know which labs are good? There's some really crappy labs out there, you guys. You got to be careful. But Genova, Vibrant, Dutch, Doctor's Data, DSL, these are companies I would stake my whole career on and have done. And it's not because, I'm just a nice guy. I mean, these are like the companies that we know work. So here, Hormone Health. This is for the Genova question. I think it's under their specialty one. Products, view more here. NutriVal, that's my favorite test of all time. So everybody should do NutriVal all the time on everybody too. Where is it? Oh well, you have to contact them, but they have it. They have all the metabolites on the test too. Not too many people use them for that because that's just so popular. So the HUMAP test is about half the price of the Dutch test. It's basically the exact same thing. They're just competing on price there. So if the patient, this Deborah is asking, if the patient has genetic defects in COMT and MTHFR, can you overcome that with supplements and diet? Yeah, absolutely. That's our whole job. That is our whole job. That is our whole job. That is our whole job, is to overcome genetic defects with supplements and diet. So, I was thinking about this last week. If I look back, in 1992, I started doing this. This is a long time ago. So if I look back on gazillions of patients that I've treated, forget about the people in class. I mean, in the classes that I've taught, tens and tens of thousands of patients I've seen labs on. But just my own patients that I've worked with directly, almost every significant case, we found biochemical individuality, which was an expression of their genetics. I mean, like almost every single case. That's where the problems are. That's what trips people up. And so yes, answer to Deborah's question is yeah. Most of what I feel like I've done in my career is find the genetic defects and fix them with nutrition. And at the time I was doing all this, I don't know that I even knew that, but now I get it. Looking back, I'm like, oh, I guess that's mostly what I've been doing. Yeah, kind of surprising in a way. Let me see. I'll show you an example of that. Here, I can show this because it's my test. I'm not going to bore you with my whole health history, but I just wanted to pull up a lab that I don't have to worry about the name being on it. And this is my name, so I'm sharing my test with you guys. And here, look at this section here. Like here, this is a good example right here. So look at my B vitamin markers. This is a Nutraval. Who's the patient? Me. Hi. So look, methylation markers. See that? Biglu, that's that marker when it goes high means that I, Dan Kalish, am deficient in folate. Well, how could that be? Because I take B vitamins every day and I take the fancy tetrahydromethylfolate kind too, like take like the right kind. How could I be low in folate if I'm taking a super high quality B vitamin every day? That almost has to be a genetic marker right there. So what do I want to do? Take a little more folate until I get that marker down into the green zone. And then I know that I've overcome any of the defects that my genes have thrown at me. Do I feel different when I get my folate levels? No, I can't even tell, to be honest, I mean, obviously I was taking folate when I did this test, but not quite enough. I can't feel it, but I know that folate's like one of the most important things just for DNA production, DNA turning on your genes and your DNA. So you have to have enough folate or you're just a metabolic and nutritional disaster. So this extra amount of folate that I put in my program, I need to retest. I've got the kit right behind me. In fact, I'm kind of procrastinating on doing it. Hopefully on my next test, that's going to be in the green zone. I'm like, oh, that's the amount of folate my body needs to have normal methylation. So most of what we're doing with organic acids, fatty acids, amino acids is making up for genetic problems. That's most of what's happening here, okay? I want to find another example. Here, this is a good one. That marker there, like how could GLA be high and DGLA be so low? I mean, they convert from one to the other, don't they? Like this stuff, and that's Dan eating flaxseed, hemp seed milk, nuts and seeds, because I do every day. Going to this stuff, like how could there be that happening? It's not possible unless there's some mild, tiny, teeny, weeny, tiny genetic issue with the enzyme. And you can even see on the lab which enzyme. Here, shows you right here. Where's the one that was high? Sorry, hang on a second. I'm scrolling in the wrong direction here. Well, here, I'll just use a different example, so one that you can see right here. Oh yeah, here it is, here it is. So this one here, it's a little hard to see, but this one here is high, and the one right below it is low. How is that even possible? It's only possible if this enzyme's not working that great. What regulates that enzyme? B3, B5, B6, biotin, and vitamin C. So you got a sluggish enzyme that's not converting one fatty acid to the next. These are the nutrients that you need to make that enzyme work. That is biochemical individuality at its finest. That's really, in my mind, what functional medicine is for, is to see where the genetic defects are in an otherwise healthy person and to get the folate right, to get the fatty acids right. So your cell membranes are good, so you're detoxing good. All that's working properly. And this is what the beauty of that testing is really for. So Deborah, thank you for asking that question. The whole point of these tests is to overcome genetic defects. Let's see. Would you use calcium D-glucarate on a patient whose beta-glucuronidase is high on the GI map, but estrogen metabolites are very low on Dutch? It depends on what's going on with the patient. You may want to wait and not use it right away, and you can, and I often do, just work on phase 2 liver detoxification because that'll indirectly clear up the beta-glucuronidase problem without screwing up estrogen in any way. And there, I have a favorite product for that. Let me just show you guys because this stuff works really well. And we were talking about this in class the other day too. It's not just me. Like all the senior students were saying, yeah, I know, Dan, this stuff works really well. Like, yeah, it does, doesn't it? So that's, I mean, I've been using this for 30 years, but it does work really well. Here, it's from Designs. It's called Amino Detox. And check out the ingredients. You give like 3 once a day, or if you want to go for it, you can do 3 twice a day. So it's everything that you ever imagined for phase 2. Glutamine, glycine, MSM, cysteine, taurine. But you can alpha ketoglutarate even, that's pretty cool to have that in there. But calcium D-glucarate, just a little bit though, see, 200 milligrams, just a tiny little bit. And it's part of an overall liver detox product. So I almost always use this one rather than straight calcium D-glucarate. In fact, 98% of the time, I just use this product because I figure, I don't know, like if their beta-glucuronidase is screwed up, it's unlikely that every other liver pathway is working perfectly. Like it's impossible. So why not just use a combination product that hits all the pathways? So, and if you use this one, it will not screw up someone with low estrogen. So 3 once a day or 3 twice a day of this product will get that whole beta-glucuronidase thing under control without using calcium D-glucarate by itself. I think that's a more effective way to do it. These are good questions, by the way. Let's see, we got a couple more minutes. Yeah, if someone's methylation is poor, you have to look at other variables. You can't just methylate the heck out of everybody, because if you methylate people that don't need it at that moment, then they're going to get a lot worse. And so, generally don't want to do that. But let me show you. It's a little more complicated than I was making it out to be. This is why you should take the mentorship, who's ever asked this question, because it's never as simple as you think. All right, this is Lanice. So Lanice, take the mentorship. I'll answer the question in the meantime here. All right, so here's what's actually happening. This is why it's more complicated. But you can't learn anything in a 45-minute free webinar, right? I mean, this is just an introduction to get you guys interested in my teaching style. If you like my teaching style, sign up for a class, So here we've got, this top part here is methylation. This bottom part here is making glutathione, okay? And so if you're under a lot of oxidative stress, your body naturally and importantly and purposely shuts down methylation and increases transsulfuration, which increases glutathione production. So if the person has super low glutathione already, and they have a lot of oxidative stress already, and you increase methylation, and you don't address the glutathione, you're going to make them worse. It's a problem. But if you address the glutathione either along with or first, crank that up radically, then you can start to work on methylation without screwing people up. So there's a lot of more nuances to this, Let's see. Let's see what other questions here. Oh, test for liver detox. So Doctors Data has a whole bunch of them. You can contact Jonathan or one of the sales reps. They'll step you through that because they have a bunch. It's a little complicated. I don't think I could answer that really quick. There's not like a single one, but just check with Doctor's Data. They'll tell you. How soon do you check methylation detox? I usually wait 3 to 6 months. 3 months is kind of soon. 6 months, is about right for most people, I think. So if this is a question about like if you get methylation wrong, how does it screw people up? So if you imagine that you're think about all the things that methylation does. If your body is not methylating well, it's often an adaptation for a reason. And if you increase methylation, you're going to increase all kinds of processes, which may be on purpose slowed down because your body can't handle them. So you can flare people up. And we don't want to have this single-minded focus just on methylation. It's got to be incorporated in. But if you do the protocols that I teach in the mentorship, which you're going to all sign up for, and you do adrenal and stress-related lifestyle stuff first, you work on the gut next. So adrenals first, gut next. A few months later, now you're working on the gut. You get the gut sorted out, and then you get to your methylation detoxification programs. You will never over-methylate anybody if you follow that protocol. It's impossible. It's never. I've never overmethylated someone in my practice, but you got to follow the protocol. Adrenals first, then gut. As the gut's getting better, then you deal with methylation, detoxification, all these things. Not first. Never do that first. You can't just jump in and deal with methylation on day one. That'll screw people up. Or in other words, the people that may get screwed up are going to get screwed up if you don't sequence things properly. And people feel worse in a million different ways, right? It just depends on what their weak point is. And there are contraindications to using all these things. For sure, there's contraindications to using DIM. You got to look at the hormone pathways carefully and make sure that it's okay to do that. And that's true for all these supplements. You know, you need to look at everything in the bigger picture. Yeah, one person here was Renee was just chiming in, stay away from DIM. You have to know what you're doing. Well, DIM is going to change your estrogen output, so you have to know what you're doing to use that one. You can stay away from that. But you're not, you know, like the products that I'm mentioning today, like DIM Detox, I don't think you have a problem with that. There's not that much DIM in it. But be careful still. You only use it if you know that the person can handle the changing of their estrogen metabolites. And if you're nervous about it, or it's the first few times you've done it, just use the amino detox product that I mentioned. That's not going to get anybody in trouble. Stick with the more generic products. I use DIM I probably have not used DIM in the last like 8-9 years of my practice. You can get away with these other things and not have to use it, okay? But if you know how to use it properly, you can use it really safely, but maybe that's not a beginner thing. The test for liver detox pathways, that's going to be organic acids, metabolomics, nutravals, whatever you want to call them. But they're looking at all the liver detox pathways, basically, through looking at glutathione and a bunch of other stuff. So for breast cancer survivors, you got to really know what you're doing. I wouldn't use any of these things until you have some expert that's helping you with it, because you don't want to make somebody worse. Everything that we're talking about now, if it's a breast cancer patient that's already had breast cancer, you need an expert in to help you advise you on what to do that's safe, okay? So in terms of how long you use something like beta-glucuronidase, calcium D-glucarate, yeah, 2-3 months, you're going to stop and retest. All of these treatments are for short term, and you're retesting, and when it's fixed, then you stop. Usually, if you're doing an individual B vitamin, like the homocysteine supreme type stuff is B6, B12, and folate, you want to have a general level of B vitamins in there as well, all the Bs. If you don't want to use the B complex, you think that's too much of the Bs, I could agree with that. Then just use a multi-pack that has some B in it. But the general rule of thumb is if you're giving individual Bs, you also have to have some B complex in the program. You don't want to avoid that. Okay, we're almost out of time. Oh my gosh, let's see, 1 or 2 more questions. These are great questions. Side effects. Yeah, so be careful with them. Be careful with calcium D-glucarate. Don't just jump in and do these things without researching them on your own, okay? You want the supplements in general that we're talking about, let's say 90-day programs and stop and retest. None of these things are designed to last for a long period of time. And for genetic testing, I use the 3x4 genetic test. How many days do you not take vitamins, minerals before the testing? Usually like a week. I think it's about right for most people. Lab testing, 3x4, we use them. And I think I better wrap it up. We're way over time. And thanks for all the questions. We have another session coming up at the end of this week in our mentorship mini series extravaganza here. And if you're asking a lot of questions and you're interested in this stuff, seriously consider signing up for the mentorship. It's starting next week. It'll change your life. It's a pretty amazing experience for people. And a year from now, you'll be an expert at lab interpretation. Take care, everybody. Talk soon.